March 12th. Okay, and here is the temperature for Crystal, Minnesota. All right, today I want to ramble about visual effects during production. Thinking about visual effects you can do in post and visual effects that you can get on set, practical visual effects and special effects. One of the things on Rebel Without a Crew, I learned the simple things that can help you just elevate that scene a little bit. I always had fishing line and duct tape on set. I always try to have those little things on set that you always want to have around. A hot glue gun. I found that a hot glue gun has come in handy so often. These are inexpensive things, and I've created sort of a duffel bag of the practical stuff that I need on set, both to make the monsters that I use in the movie, but also just to save the day when I'm trying to come up with an effect. The evil Bible in The Good Exorcist was one of those things where I just had a bunch of clay, some fake blood, these cheap eyeballs, and a hot glue gun, and I sort of just made it out of nothing. A permanent marker. It's so easy to forget to just have like a black permanent marker. Just having those little necessary items in a bag can save the day. I mean, we had so many times where Daniel and I bought this tubing for The Good Exorcist, and I've kept that around in my little duffel bag ever since then, because we never know when you're gonna have to spray blood, shoot teddy bear vomit into someone's face. So having things like that. This is a really tough video because it all depends on your set of skills in post-production and the way your brain thinks when thinking about visual effects. There are so many moments where I will remember to get a plate while I'm on set, and that plate will then help me create the visual effect. For those of you who don't know what a plate is, it's when you're like on a set and you have a character on scene and then you just have them leave scene, so you just have the set. And that often comes in handy when you're trying to do stuff like, let's say someone gets shot in the head and you want blood to spray the wall. You don't have to track that wall. You have it blank. You have a blank canvas to work on, and shadows aren't moving and things aren't changing. So having that blank canvas can be really helpful in post-production. I've talked a lot about these note cards that I have when I write my script, and a lot of times on those note cards, one of the notes I'll have is the sort of visual effects that I'm thinking. The reason I put tentacles in my movies so much isn't because I'm obsessed with tentacles, although I am obsessed with tentacles. A lot of it is because I know how to do the effect. So if I write some nasty tentacle or a tongue into a movie, I know that I can make that tongue in post-production because I've done it so much. So thinking about what you know you can do in post-production is hugely beneficial. Having that fishing line on set, I know I can remove that in post-production. Just go to it and be like, well, we need something to move here. How can we make something move? Oh, fishing line. With the 1st of November, when we were trying to figure out, well, how do we make these pumpkins move? And we cut holes in the top of the pumpkins, ran the fishing line through, and then we were able to kind of like move it like a puppet. Strauss was holding on to him, which wasn't easy. Strauss was, having to really muscle these pumpkins around and keep them moving in the right direction and think about the flow. There's probably a better way to do it if we had thought it out better, but the fact that we had the fishing line on set when it was necessary made the difference. We wouldn't have been able to bring the pumpkins to life in the same way if we didn't have it. One of the sort of faux pas of low-budget filmmaking is that people always talk about fixing it in post, and then they're unable to fix it in post. I mean, this is a concept that I sort of disagree with, because as I'm saying fix it in post, or we'll make this work in post, I know kind of what I'm going to do. I'm not fixing it in post, I'm elevating it in post. There's a massive difference between going into it thinking, we just gotta rush through this and get it done, and going like, okay, well, let's think it through. How can I make this visual effect work? And a lot of those visual effects were simple things, as long as you're thinking about how you're going to edit them in post, which I'll talk about more in my next video tomorrow. Maybe I'll talk about writing for your edit. But that's, with visual effects, that's a big part of it. There's a visual effect in The Good Exorcist where they walk from room to room, do the poltergeist sort of joke of, walking into the room, walking into another set of the room, and then the camera pans back and the chairs are all up on top of the table. I wanted to do that, except make the room a mess, and like everything became a mess while Stanley was just standing there stupidly not paying attention. What I did was I had the camera move, move along, and then we got to a wall and I stopped at the wall, and then had everyone run in the other room while I stood totally still, had them go and move everything around, and then I kept moving, and I was able to just cut out that time. I needed to set up that thing in the foreground that we crossed so that when the camera is moving, I had a place to stop and a cut point in my mask. So I thought about it in advance, and that's the key to special effects, especially in the digital age where we can do so much in post, and we all have access to After Effects. And there is this mentality of like, we can kind of do anything, even in low budget. I just looked back at the Good Exorcist sizzle reel, and there's that moment where Father Gill is in hell, and in the sizzle reel, I just put these like stupid flames in the background. And then knowing later how I brought that hell sequence to life, and we had all of the ashes floating around, and we brightened it a little bit, and we had the light shining down on Father Gill, and all of the little elements in the background in hell. Knowing where we went from the beginning and what it originally was, just Daniel kneeling in the same spot that, Robert Rodriguez filmed Planet Terror sequences. Knowing that I could have Daniel do that there, and then we could do a bunch of stuff in post if we put in the time. Now, that's a sequence that I would have loved to even gone bigger. I would have loved to have done more. I had to put myself under a time constraint too, and that's the other thing you need to think about when you're working on visual effects and going into it thinking about your visual effects. I'm curious what kind of visual effects you all do. This topic is something that, for me, is super interesting, and I could ramble over hours about the visual effects I've done. I would love to get a conversation going about what kind of visual effects you use. Examples. We've done everything on our movies from making these little clay monsters and, the skull in Greywood's plot. The Chupacabra skull in Greywood's plot was a cheap $5 plastic skull from Target, like the discount Halloween shit. And then we just added clay, we made some little dirty fake eyeballs, and then in post-production I put maggots in the eyes. Just those subtle little things can make a huge difference. I highly recommend learning After Effects. Even if you're the director and you're never going to be the one doing most of the visual effects, having an understanding about where you will be able to go with it, how a mask works, how you can layer things, how you can remove fishing line, how you can add so many elements to your movie. If you just have an understanding of how the software works and what you can get away with, anything is possible with visual effects these days. It's just a matter of what your budget is, what you know how to do, and what you have the time to do. I'm always trying to think in those parameters with my movies, even as I'm writing, as I'm going into production, while I'm on set. In that moment, I will literally be talking to Daniel and say out loud, okay, we're going to mask you out of this shot. We were constantly adding little light streaks or dust in the air or flies in post because we knew we had this dust effect and we knew we had different things that we could get away with. Those will make a world of difference as you're in production because you know what you can do in post. So I can't wait to hear what kind of visual effects you all have done, and I will probably talk a lot more about visual effects, some of my favorites that I have been able to get away with in my movies, and things that in movies I've seen that aren't great visual effects. In huge budget movies, I can sit and talk about visual effects for forever. I want to hop on Sunday morning when I have my coffee. I'll be live on YouTube around 9 a.m. Central, maybe a little earlier this Sunday, and I'll be talking about all of this stuff. Visual effects I've used, some of my favorite techniques. And I'm just going to sort of sit back, relax, and chit-chat with you all in the chat. Make sure to leave a comment, give me those thumbs, do whatever, YouTube stuff. I cannot wait to see the visual effects you all put into your low-budget movies and the fun little techniques you use, because I really do think they elevate our low-budget movies and the kind of independent stuff we're making. Any advice or tricks or tips or stuff you use, make sure to comment below. I gotta go get shit done. So until next time, cheers, keep kicking ass. Let's have a great Friday. Let's make today rock. It's the weekend! Woo! Alright, fuck. Way too long.